On
On. And good evening, everybody. My name is Dante, and this is my partner Dewo. Once again, welcome to the 2D podcast.
We hope you enjoyed the last video we made, and we would like to take the chance to once again thank everyone for the support you have given us and for the positive comments that we were given from the last podcast.
Today's episode, we're gonna dive into another important topic that we feel needs to be addressed. This episode, we're going to dive into the Myanmar coup.
The Myanmar coup is one of the most tragic and polarizing events that are currently happening in our world today. It is impacting a lot of people's lives in Myanmar, and it caused widespread international attention and criticism towards Myanmar's military. Countries have spoken up towards these actions as it is an act towards and against human rights.
So basically, the whole event, what happened was a coup d'etat in Myanmar began on the morning of the 1st of February 2021, when the democratically elected members of the country's ruling party, the National League for Democracy, or the NLD, were deposed by the Tatmadaw, Myanmar's military, which had invested power in a stratocracy. The Tatmadaw proclaimed a year-long state of emergency and declared power had been transferred to Commander-in-Chief of Defense Services, Min Aung Hlaing. It declared the results of the 2020 general election invalid and stated its intent to hold a new election at the end of the state of emergency, even though most of Myanmar's people are satisfied with the results of the election. Coup d'etat occurred the day before the parliament of Myanmar was due to swear in the members elected at the 2020 election, thereby preventing this from occurring. President Win Myint and State Councillor Aung San detained, along with ministers, their deputies, and members of parliament.
In 1988, nationwide protests broke out in the country, dubbed the 8888 uprising. The civil unrest was sparked by economic mismanagement, leading the Win to step down. In September 1988, the military's top leaders formed the State Law and Order Restoration Council, or the SLORC, which then seized power. Aung San Suu Kyi, the daughter of the country's modern former Aung San, became a notable pro-democracy activist during this period. In 1990, free elections were allowed by the military under the assumption that the military enjoyed popular support. Ultimately, the elections resulted in a landslide victory for Aung San Suu Kyi, her party, the National League for Democracy. However, the military refused to cede power and placed her under house arrest. The military remained in power for another 22 years until 2011, following the military's roadmap to democracy, during which the 2008 Constitution of Myanmar was drafted. Between 2011 and 2015, a tentative democratic transition began, and elections held in 2015 resulted in a victory for Aung San Suu Kyi, her party, the National League for Democracy, NLD. However, the military retained substantial power, including the right to appoint a quarter of all parliament members.
2021 coup occurred in the aftermath of the general election on 8 November 2020, in which the NLD won 396 out of 470 seats in parliament, an even larger margin of victory than in the 2015 election. The military's proxy party, the Union Solidarity and Development Party, won only 33 seats. The army disputed the results, claiming that the vote was fraudulent. The coup attempt had been rumored for several days, prompting statements of concern from Western nations, such as the United Kingdom, France, United States, and Australia.
NLD spokesman Yoon Myint said that Aung San Suu Kyi, Win Myint, Han Da-mint, and other party members had been taken in an early morning raid. Myint added that he expected to be also detained shortly. Numerous communication channels stopped working. Phone lines to the capital, Naypyidaw, were interrupted. State-run MRTV said it was unavailable to broadcast due to, quote-unquote, technical issues, and widespread internet disruptions were reported beginning around 3 a.m. The military disrupted cellular services throughout the country, mirroring kill switch tactics previously employed in combat zones in Chin Rakhine states. All the member banks under the Myanmar Banking Association suspended their financial services. Around 400 elected members of parliament, MPs, were placed under house arrest, confined to a government housing complex in Naypyidaw. Following the coup, the NLD arranged for the MPs to remain housed in the complex until 6th of February. Social media users began calling on MPs to convene a parliamentary session within a government guest house, since the group met the Constitution's quorum requirements. In response, the military issued another order giving MPs 24 hours to leave the guest house premises. On 4th February, 70 NLD MPs took an oath of office in clear defiance of the coup. During the coup, soldiers also detained several Buddhist monks who led the 2007 Saffron Revolution, including Myawaddy Sayadaw and Shwenya Warsayadaw, outspoken critics of the military. 88888 uprising activist leaders, including Myai, were also arrested. As of 4th of February, the Assistant Association of Political Prisoners had identified 133 officials and lawmakers and 14 civil society activists in detention by the military as a result of the coup. Soldiers were seen in Naypyidaw and the largest city, Yangon. The military subsequently announced on military-controlled Myawaddy TV that it had taken control of the country for 1 year. A statement signed by acting President Mitsue declared that responsibility for quote-unquote legislation, administration, and judiciary had been transferred to Min Aung Hlaing. The National Defense and Security Council, chaired by acting President Mitsue and attended by top military officers, was convened, following which a statement was issued by the military declaring that fresh elections would be held and that power would only be transferred after they had concluded. The military also announced the removal of 24 ministers and deputies, for whom 11 replacements were named.
The military's motives for the coup remain unclear. Ostensibly, the military had solicited that alleged voter fraud threatened national sovereignty. A few days before the coup, the civilian-appointed Union Election Commission had categorically rejected the military's claims of voter fraud, citing the lack of evidence to support the military's claims of 8.6 million irregularities in voter lists across Myanmar's 340 townships. The coup may have been driven by the military's goal to preserve its central role in Burmese politics. The Defense Services Act imposes a mandatory retirement age of 65 for the armed forces commander have been forced to retire on his 65th birthday in July. Furthermore, the Constitution empowers solely the President in consultation with the National Defense and Security Council with the authority to appoint Min Aung Hlaing successor, which could provide an opportunity for the civilian arm of the government to appoint a more reform-minded military officer as Commander-in-Chief. Hlaing's lack of power would have exposed him to potential prosecution and accountability for alleged war crimes during the Rohingya conflict in various international courts. Min Aung Hlaing had also hinted at a potential entry into politics as a civilian after his retirement.
So on to our thoughts and whatever we're thinking.
You can speak first, go.
Yeah, I think the first thing to take note of would be to worry about the people. I think that's the most important thing. Aside from, of course, the people in danger, that is government officials and whatnot. Ultimately, we also have to worry about the general population in Myanmar, as we can clearly see that military have a lot of control and power. Yeah. You like that onto that?
That's all I have to. Oh, okay. So basically, yeah, what you said was right, because basically Myanmar's living in a state of democracy where people had a chance to step up and say what they want, but with the recent developments in the whole military coup, Myanmar is slowly changing from a country of democracy to a country of dictatorship, and it's not a good thing. It's definitely not a good thing because of the fact that this has been a state of Myanmar for the past 20-30 years. And the fact that the military's power had been always substantially larger than, for say, the government's when it comes to politics is very, very concerning, considering the fact that in a normal democracy, the government and the people should have more power of the military. As democracy, it focuses on the rights of the people and what they want as a country. It's not a dictatorship or other forms of government where the military holds power over the whole country, and they dictate over what goes in and goes throughout the whole country, or what runs the government basically. It's just not what democracy really is. So they're basically going against what democracy really is and the way of life in Myanmar. And another thing to bring into question is an act against human rights, because like like people, like it's not just politicians are being personally affected by this. Yes, they're like politicians like the president are all being like forcibly on house arrest. Like all MPs that are in the party are being like rounded up. They're being imprisoned for unclear reasons, except for the military's motives, which them and no one really knows what the military's motives really are, except maybe that they just want to make sure they still have control over the population and over the government and the country in Myanmar. Or like this is they're also afraid of losing their standing, because like what I previously mentioned, like because like they have an act or they have a law that states that they will like people or like the president can get rid of the current commander in chief by the time like the commander in chief turns 65. And I'm guessing, I'm pretty sure that the commander in chief does not want to retire at that time, which is why they want to make sure they can be in a position where they can enforce and change that law into something that they feel is more comfortable. So that like that's my like. Do you have anything to add, though?
And I think the part of the whole human rights thing, just know that due to this, there has been a lot of violent actions. There's a lot of protesters. They're from teachers, lawyers, students, bank officers, government workers. But the military has also imposed restriction. There's curfews, limited gatherings, and then in response to any protesters, security forces like they use water cannons, rubber bullets, and all that, even live ammunition to try to disturb protesters. And then I just read on 27th of March, in the deadliest day since the coup started, more than 100 people have been killed on that day, strictly on that day.
Damn, really? 100 days?
Yeah,
I don't know that.
and
That
then
that just
and then the military
go ahead.
commander in chief, Min Aung Hlaing, since he's taken power, he's got a lot of international like a lot of people condemning him and like for like what he's been doing, but since Myanmar is their own country, they can't really do much. So yeah.
Yeah, like I can to add it towards that, like what you just recently said, like Myanmar's own country, like it also calls into concern that not a lot of other countries can really do much. Like you can't really say like why isn't the US stepping in? Why isn't the UK? Why isn't the UN doing something? The problem with that is just that Myanmar's their own country. Like for a country like the US or someone to just forcibly start, then yes, it's basically violating a country's sovereignty, even though it's for the right reasons. It's technically is violating country sovereignty because you are entering their country unannounced and without them asking you to do. And the conflict that is happening is within the country. So what are other countries really supposed to be doing? Like it's hard to resolve a conflict that is happening within a country, especially like a civil war. It's very hard to do that because like if you back one side, it could be a whole disaster for that one side, because that will just lead to even more like problems for them, and for the other side to tackle even more. Which is why like countries are probably not like really aiding that much, because they don't have the right to do that. And plus it's like the war that they're fighting, or the fight they're having right now in our country, is between Myanmar like between the people of Myanmar, not the international people of other countries. It's not. But like if it does become international issue, like if like citizens from other countries are starting being affected, now that is when it becomes an international issue, because that citizen that if they were to hurt is not it's not from Myanmar. If it's from another country, now that's when that other country from that person can step in, because because that's part of that's it just makes it their sovereignty as well. And like this event, like it's close to home for like both of us, because it's kind of similar to what's happened to our country like 40 years ago, 40 years ago.
On the
Actually no,
30th of September.
they're 1965, so that's 30 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, I think 30 years ago.
1960. Is that
1965? That's 1965, so that's around 36 years. Oh, it's 36 years. Like 35, 36 years. Yeah.
1965, 56?
56 years. Okay, I was wrong. Like 56. Sorry, part of my math. 56. It's been 56 years since this happened, but it's still a huge, huge moment in our country's history in Indonesia, because, like, Well, it's basically similar because the then current president was being forced to step down by another party. Like I'm not gonna say what it is, but like by an attacking party who wanted to take control of the government. So what they did was they staged a military coup for against the during the president that time Sukarno, and they like staged a military coup to take the military to take the whole government. Thankfully, it failed, but then the whole thing is such a whole like worldwide phenomenon that people knows because of the fact that like a lot of military generals and top officers from the military were killed during a span of few days, and the fact that but and thankfully the due to those deaths the acts that the other party was wanted to do was stopped. But at the same time, it was not really a good ending after that because after that, it plunged our country into a state of dictatorship for the next 30 outcome, isn't it? Because it came from being attacked, from being a military coup by a party who wanted to take control of the government to the military general who supposedly saved the government and the country, also removing the current president during that time and becoming president at the same time and ended up being a dictator for Indonesia for the next 33 years. So yeah, so it makes sense why we're talking about this because it hits close to home and like even though we weren't there to experience it,
Mhm.
like this happening 50 years ago, it's still within our blood and our country's history to remember this. Like we just can't forget about it because it's like it's that those events are what makes our country what it is today. Like even though it's bad, it's what makes our country today. So we really and we can't really do much about it. So we just have to accept it and try to adapt to the times. So, do you have anything to say? Do you have anything to add, though?
Yeah, and just one last thing to add. Again about the people. Understand that this is happening in a time where we're also dealing with another world problem. Of course, COVID, obviously. So pretty much almost everyone in the entire country is in risk of something, at least. They might get hurt by, we don't know, might get hurt by either a bullet or a virus. We wouldn't know. However, the junta head, they have claimed that Aung San Suu Kyi is in good health and will appear in court soon. And then there are funds that are being raised against the whole coup. So I think as a message to any viewer is as much as you can try to raise awareness for this issue. The A coup can really do things to a country. Honestly, it can bring ruin to people and governments. And since what's happening in Myanmar is very dangerous to the people, there might be the people might see like really bad effects to them, or either by through violence or whatnot. So yeah, is that it? You think we can wrap it up?
I think we've basically
Let's
thing
wrap it up.
and basically no one last thing actually that
Sure.
because we need to like raise awareness about this. Like we're doing this because we want to raise awareness to people about what's really happening and that people should really be united about this act because this is Myanmar is a country in Asia. So technically, even though we're not beyond still a country in Asia and we protect each other. Every country in Asia have to protect each other, it's just how it is. So like why we were doing this because we want to raise awareness about the thing that's been happening for the past few months. And it's really damaging to a country considering how Myanmar is in a state of emergency. Like they're in chaos, basically. People are suffering due to the acts of the military who are arrogant. And all of that is due to one man's greed, power, which is ask for too much, and we can't always be too greedy. The day it affects a lot of people, and affects a lot of people. Our greed affects a lot of people. Like we should, but how our greed about something, for example,
Straight up, you just
or
cut off.
what's happening.
Hold on. Pause. Repeat what you said.
People should like raise awareness, be more aware what's happening, so that like you can spread out the word and step up because this is what we're supposed to be together as humans against this act against human rights.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say. Okay, so let's wrap this up, shall we? Let's wrap this up.
Too.
Okay. And that's it for today, everybody. Well, everyone, we hope you had a good time listening to us. Maybe you learned a thing or two. Maybe we helped confirm your suspicions about us. Maybe even found something wrong with us. But then again, remember, this is just our opinion. Do not judge us. Do not cancel one of us on social media or something. This is just strictly our own opinion. Everyone has their own opinions, and this is just strictly our own opinion.
And we're
we
just
hope
raising awareness, spreading the
yeah,
message.
exactly. And we hope you respect it. For that matter, don't judge.
Anyways, once again, it's been Dante and Dewo. Thank you for joining us on the 2D podcast. Have a good day and stay safe. Bye bye.
Goodbye.